Question 1. In 2020, thousands of people marched and protested the city of Portland demanding racial justice. Some protesters, they called for police reform. Some called for defunding to drastically shrink the size of the police budget, while others called for defunding to complete abolition. Nearly 2 years later, elected officials still think of police response when they hear the word and the phrase public safety. But we think that definition is too narrow. So let's go into it. What is your definition of community safety? What are your plans to reimagine public safety and create a city that provides vital services such as housing, healthcare, parks, and equitable access to food to communities that need an effective and equitable, sustainable way?
That's a really good question. I really love that question because it really is, how do we build a better Portland? How do we reimagine our experience in a thoughtful way? How are we being innovative? I believe that community safety comes from well-resourced communities. Well-resourced communities are safe communities. And well-resourced communities mean that we are prioritizing housing, food access, transportation, particularly public transportation. We're really prioritizing healthcare, childcare, really all of the things that help move us as people. That has to come from the city level. We cannot continue to say these folks, the CBO over here, or this, is doing the work. The government has to participate in really using the dollars they collect from us as taxpayers to fund the things, the needs in community in real time. I really believe that when we're talking about public safety and reimagining it, we need to de-invest in the police. We need to invest in community in real time. We have a lot of solutions right now in this moment, and we're currently not using them. We're not, from a city standpoint, working with CBOs or community-based organizations. We are not having long-term sustainable funding. So community-based organizations, even across the color line, are just it's a chicken and egg dance. It's really problematic. They're trying to do services while also trying to make sure they have funding. And this sort of goes across the issue. And in our community, in the Black community, without deep connections to deep resources, this makes it really hard to have long-term, thoughtful, sustainable programming. That means the government does need to support our work. And at Equitable Giving Circle, we're really, really focused on community care right now. Big impact at the root issue. So food access changes lives. Housing access changes lives. Healthcare, just that access point, is life-giving to people. We need the government to get behind that. We need to prioritize the Black community because we intersect everywhere. And if we are really looking at data points, which I love, I'm definitely what's the data? Let's look at that real quick and then jump off from there. And that is the base of our solutions. We look at the data, we know that first of all, when you let Black women lead, shit gets done. And when you let Black people lead and Black women lead, we are really thoughtful about everybody. And we have wraparound services that include everybody. We need that. And there's other data points that look at the things when we're letting Black women lead, both in political spaces, in community-based organization spaces, so much magic happens. I can use, Equitable Giving Circle as an example. That type of public service, that type of care is changing our community in real time. People are able to save money, which shifts whole households' futures. Just by having food access ongoing that is sustainable and reliable. What does it look like when we put that kind of thoughtful care into all of our programming, coming from the city center? That is how we reimagine public safety. We really have to invest in community in real time with the service that we need. The other thing I want to say about public safety is that the police don't prevent crime. They do not prevent anything. They show up after the fact with a notebook, and they may or may not traumatize people. They may or may not record I don't know what they do allegedly after they take those notes. Because they may or may not file that, or who knows, it gets lost, or it's a whole hoopla, right? So they don't prevent anything. Why are we continuing to invest in policing when it doesn't prevent any crime? They show up after the fact. Before crime happens, if we're investing in community, we already know that we're preventing crime. We're supporting people before they get desperate, before they get, in crisis, before they are just trying to figure something out. That is the root of crime, not having the resources. If we have resources readily available, then people can tap in that. It also having ongoing sustainable programming and funding for preventative things like food, housing, healthcare, public transportation, childcare. If we are investing in that in advance, we really are shaping our city in a different way. And it makes the feeling of the city differently. Everybody wins. It's really critical that we shift away from this model that obviously doesn't work. The data says it doesn't work. The community doesn't like it. And shift it to something that we have data that works. Can't keep investing in the past and expect a different future.
Thank you. You hit some beautiful points. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about your nonprofit. I mean, you all have been doing great work for a long time and filling the gaps, like you said, of a system that was designed for Black folks to fail. And I appreciate your response, and thank you for sharing a little bit more.